going to talk about this morning, I'm going to give a brief summary of laboratory methods for cyanotoxins and specifically microsystems. And I'm going to discuss the advantages and the disadvantages of at least a couple of the methods, the most common ones. Kim mentioned this. This is an active area of research. Over 90 microsystem variants are known to exist. There are few standardized analysis methods. And we need both selective and sensitive methods for this, because you saw the toxicities that Kim showed. These things are very toxic, so we have to be able to analyze them accurately at very low concentrations. Because of the high cost of some of these analyses, we need a low-cost method of screening samples that is still sensitive and accurate. There are only a few analytical standards available for microsystems, and the toxin-producing generally produce more than one cyanotoxin, which makes it a little bit more complicated. Kim also mentioned this. The World Health Organization has assigned risk levels to different concentrations between low risk and very high risk, running from 10 micrograms per liter to 2,000 micrograms per liter, which is parts per billion. And they also have a provisional guideline for drinking water. And as a wildlife agency, this is what we need to shoot for, because surface water for wildlife is drinking water. And that's 1 microgram per liter. As an analytical laboratory, we really want to be able to accurately analyze and report at 10 times below whatever the health thresholds are. So we're actually looking at 1/10 of a part per billion. Some sample handling procedures. Toxin samples need to be processed and shipped the same day or within 24 hours. They need to be stored at around 4 degrees centigrade in the dark, and you can use amber glass, Teflon, or polyethylene. If polyethylene is used, it's recommended that the sample is rinsed several times, at least 3 times with the container, because polyethylene will absorb microsystem toxins. Toxins can be stored frozen for several months or even years, but once they're frozen, only total concentrations can be measured. And the toxin for standard laboratory procedure is that the extracts be analyzed within 40 days of extraction. For water and scum, the total toxin is equal to the dissolved phase toxin plus the particulate or bound toxin. And the analysis of the total toxin, which would be the worst case, requires cell lysis. And that can be done chemically or mechanically, either by sonication, or it can be achieved by doing freeze-thaw cycles. For biological tissues, it's more complicated. The total toxin is equal to the free toxin plus the covalently bound toxin. Most tissue analysis methods currently only measure the free toxin, because it takes a pretty severe oxidation step to free the covalently bound toxins. This shows some of the methods that are available. From the top, protein phosphatase inhibition assay. It provides analysis. It also provides toxicity information. It's also very inexpensive, which is nice, but it's not really commercially available, and it's not quantitative. Enzyme-linked immunosuppression, immunoabsorbent assay, ELISA. It's also expensive. It's based on molecular recognition by antibodies. It's commercially available. There are a lot of kits. And it's very sensitive, but it does have limitations that I'm going to talk about later. Liquid chromatography using ultraviolet detection also works, but it's relatively expensive. It requires a pretty highly trained, qualified analyst, and there are limitations to that method also. Liquid chromatography using mass spectrometry or tandem mass spectrometry detection requires very expensive instrumentation and highly qualified analysts, but it is probably the best way to go at this point. And the last one is quantitative polymerase chain reaction, qPCR genetic testing. Can be used. It can determine if potentially toxic organisms are present even if they haven't released toxins. And there's future potential in that, but it's not really commercially available either. This shows the relationship between sensitivity and selectivity. The ELISA method is very sensitive. It's not as selective. It's towards the bottom of the selectivity range. LCMS, tandem mass spectrometry, is up at the top, both in sensitivity and selectivity. You already saw this. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. Kim showed this slide too, because this will be important in the next slide, so it's going to be on the test. Microsystems are cyclic heptapeptides. They have 7 amino acids. 5 of them are invariant, 2 of them are variant. One of the invariant amino acids that's common to all microsystems is this ADA group that I've got circled here. The other 2 sites where the variant amino acids attach, you can have leucine, arginine, tyrosine, alanine, phenylalanine, or tryptophan. The most common microcystin toxin is microcystin LR, which has leucine and arginine at these attachment points. So talking about ELISA kits, the pros and cons, they're very sensitive for water samples, down to at least 1 ppb, which is where we want to be. They're inexpensive. A 96 well plate is about $800, which comes to about $20 per sample. They show good recoveries, 73 to 93%, and percent RSDs are decent, 14 to 21%. And the analysis doesn't require multiple standards, which is a plus for a screening tool. The disadvantages or cons, they tend to have high percent recoveries in RSDs. Now back to the other slide, there are a couple different kits. There's an ADA kit, which is specific for the ADA group, and there's an LR kit that's specific to microcystin LR. So that's what I'm going to be referring to here. The ADA kit, the recoveries are from 133 to 189%, which is kind of high. Percent RSD is also a little bit high. False positives for these kits run about 17% for the LR kit and 6% for the ADA kit. False negatives, which is even more important because you don't want to report that something is not present when it is, especially something that's toxic, is 15% for the microcystin LR kit. So just based on that and the fact that the ADA kit works for all of the microsystems and it has a 0% false negative, we think that that's a better choice. The ELISA kits show variable cross-reactivity with other microcystin variants, and they are subject to matrix interferences, and some are pretty severe. So some recommendations if you're going to use ELISA kits. The kits should be systematically tested for performance to specific applications, including the matrix. I think that's really important. Not all the kits are the same. Some of them measure free microcystin in water, and some of them measure total. It depends on whether or not they include a cell lysis step. The analyst, you don't need a highly trained chemist to run these, but they need to have good laboratory technique. It's very important so that they get good precision. The use of second source standard solutions is always a good idea. In the laboratory, we always use 2 sources of standards because there's always a chance you're going to get a standard that's not what it says it is. That happens more times than not. All of the positive results and a percentage of the negative results should be confirmed by LC-MS or tandem mass spectrometry. And right now, the preferred method is LC tandem mass spectrometry just because it eliminates a lot of the interferences that can be present with LC-MS. So in summary, there's no perfect analysis method. We feel that screening with ELISA followed by confirmation by LC tandem mass spectrometry is a good approach. We think that at least 5% of ELISA negative results should be confirmed by liquid chromatography. Future use of qPCR is a possibility. And you should always communicate clearly with the laboratory that's doing your work, and that's the case with any analysis. And that's it. Thank you very much. And we'll take questions.
Well, I think we should hold off on questions. They're going to be around for